Hello there, everybody. I'm Jeff Mayers from WisPolitics.com. Welcome to another one of our virtual events. Today's event is one of our DC events. We're not in DC, but where some of our guests are. And the topic today is, shockingly, Battleground Wisconsin 2020, State of the Race in Swing State, Wisconsin. We'll also check in on some of the top Senate races around the country and try to give a national picture and how Wisconsin fits into the national picture. Before I introduce our all-star panel, I want to talk about some upcoming events. We have two events with the Milwaukee Press Club next week, including one with Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett. And you can check out the schedule on those at WisPolitics.com. Then our next DC event is going to be on November 12th. During the noon hour in Wisconsin and from Eastern time for those in DC. But we're going to be talking about healthcare, how healthcare may change after the election. I think we might know the election results by November 12th, but maybe our panel can help shed light on that probing question. So I want to introduce our all-star panel. It's a really great group, and I thank each of them for appearing today. First off, Kari Pennybacher, and he's a DNC committeeman and a former congressional candidate. And happy birthday, Kari. We also have Jason Ray. He's a National Democratic National Committee officer. He was elected secretary of the DNC in 2017. We have Tom Schreibel. He's an RNC committeeman and former chief of staff to Congressman Jim Sensenbrenner. And Ashley Rich Stevenson, Vice President, National Political Director of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and a former Scott Walker advisor. So welcome, everybody. Let me just start with you, Tom. You're in D.C., and you're also with Michael Best Strategies. I forgot to thank our sponsors. Before I go to you, Tom, I'm going to have to thank our sponsors. Apologies. For the DC event series, Michael Best and Michael Best Strategies, WPS Health Solutions, Excel Energy, Exact Sciences, and the partners, the Wisconsin Alumni Association and UW-Madison. Okay, now back to you, Tom. So tonight we have a debate, presidential debate. Could that change? How's that going to change things? The dynamic of this race?
The debate's going to change the dynamic of the race one bit, especially with the format that we're looking at. The rules were changed. Now they have the mute button. We'll see how that works out this evening. But, when for a debate really to change the tenor of the race and really try to convince people, it would have to be a breakout moment by either candidate to really persuade people. When you're looking at the polling, it's 2 to 3% of people are undecided. And with this race, I still scratch my head on why people are undecided, because the lines are so clearly drawn.
Yes, it does seem quizzical that somebody could be undecided in this race. So let me go to Kari now. Kari, a DNC committeeman and former congressional candidate. Again, happy birthday, Kari. What do you think, how could the debate change the dynamics of this race right now?
I would actually agree with Tom. I don't think it's going to change much tonight, other than if one of them, more likely to be Donald Trump, that's going to do something poorly like what happened in the last debate. Other than that, I don't see anything changing. I think folks are at this point ready, anxious, and excited about voting if they already haven't. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen on November 3rd.
Okay. Jason Ray. How are you, Jason? What's your view on how the debate tonight may shape the race from here on in?
Yeah, I don't think anything Jeff is going to on the debate stage tonight will change anything with this race at the end of the day. But I know that people are really excited to tune in and get to hear, Joe Biden talk directly to the American people, the tens of millions of people who are going to watch, to really hear from a leader who understands what's going on. And regardless of what happens on stage, debates are really a test of presidential temperament. It's not about the mute button or anything like that. I think it's going to be about what Donald Trump will bring, whether it's more of the antics that he brought last time, or if he's going to try to bring solutions tonight to the table. But I know that Joe Biden's going to be prepared either way. And, you know, this race has been pretty stable from the beginning. And I don't think anything on tonight's debate stage will really change that.
Okay, well, you guys say millions are watching, but you're not hyping the debate that much. You're not going to say it's going to change anything. All right. Ashley from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Ashley, what's your view on tonight's debate?
Sure. I have a little bit of a different view, Jeff, than the rest of the panel. I think that these are always opportunities for both candidates to show leadership. And 4 years ago in the last debate, President Trump really showed restraint. I think that viewers are going to be watching to see if he's able to replicate some of that. And one of the interesting things announced this morning is that Joe Biden, and I think it made sense to do this ahead of the debate, said that he is going to put together a bipartisan panel to look at the courts and make some sense of this all going forward. And he has been repeatedly asked as whether or not he would include or, expand the number of people on the Supreme Court. This is a real opportunity, I think, for the president to ask the former vice president what his true plans are. Was this just a gimme? You know, what was this? And dig into that a little bit more. Another opportunity for the president to talk about jobs in the economy. That's still paired with healthcare and COVID-19 is a top issue, one that he does lead the vice president on, albeit marginally, as better equipped to handle with that issue. And if I were advising the campaign, I would suggest that he stay wholly focused on jobs in the economy and turn it back on the former vice president to talk about what was brought up this week, specifically related to his tax plan that would really skyrocket in a couple of these states. That's where I would go. I do think there's an opportunity, as Tom said, 2 to 3% left undecided. You have to go and try and win them. So use this as a chance to do that.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about what Ashley said here about the court packing issue. Is that really the kind of issue that's going to get those undecideds one way or the other, or really fire up the base? Jason, what do you think about that?
Well, I think what, you know, the announcement from Vice President Biden today really shows is the type of leader that he's actually going to be. And I think that's what the American people want to see. They want to understand what kind of leadership a president will bring. And, you know, they can see, you know, an erratic leader who's going to govern by tweet, or they can see someone who's going to bring together people of diverse backgrounds. I think one of the most important pieces of this court commission is that it's a bipartisan group. Joe Biden has built a really big coalition of folks who want to help improve America. And this court commission is one step of that. It's really looking at all of the options to reform the court system and make sure that the courts aren't just a political football. So I'm really excited about that. And I think those are things that the American people want to hear. They want to hear about how a candidate is going to lead. They want to hear what they're going to do and how they're going to bring people together to find solutions that'll help American people. And I think that's what you saw from Joe Biden's announcement. I think that's some of the things they want to see in the debate tonight. They really want to see more solutions. They want to understand how you're going to help make their lives better. And that's what Joe Biden brings to the table. And I'm excited for that.
So, you know, of course, why we're talking about court packing is because of the Amy Coney Barrett nomination, and which was advanced by the Republican-controlled Judiciary Committee today over, I guess, a Democratic boycott. But, you know, she's on her way to confirmation. Karee, how big of an issue is, you know, the Supreme Court, the court packing? You know, is that an issue that's going to move a lot of Wisconsin voters?
It may move some, but I wouldn't say it would be a lot. What's motivating voters right now is being able to vote by itself. I mean, I think that's a huge issue, whether they're going to early vote or vote in person, because folks are flat out scared about the pandemic and about how it's going to impact their family today and in the future. Are they going to have a job tomorrow in a month? And how is healthcare going to impact that? And what's going to happen with their healthcare after this election or as a result of this election? That's the thing that they're talking about right now. Those are kitchen table issues. Now, those of us who may be talking about things in the weeds regarding the Supreme Court, about its current structure or what it's going to be like after this election, that's a different subject. I don't think that is an overwhelming issue that's going to motivate people to vote or vote otherwise.
Okay, Tom, you know, how big of a motivator for the base, the Republican base, is the Supreme Court issue? Amy Coney Barrett, court packing, et cetera.
I think it's a real issue. And, you know, the Republican base is, you know, this puts the level of, you know, what happens if Joe Biden becomes president of the United States. And, Joe Biden sat there for weeks and weeks and weeks not responding. He was forced into this decision today. I mean, this wasn't a voluntary, I'm going to create a commission. He was forced into this today. And he didn't want to give an answer on this for weeks. And now all of a sudden today, right before the debate, he tries to take it off the table. Simply by forming a commission is not going to take this issue off the table. And this issue is driving Republican voters to the polls.
Yeah, it seems like he could have run out the clock on this. Why did he have to do anything, Jason?
I think he wanted to talk about the type of leadership he's going to be. But, I think at the end of the day, when you come back to the question around whether this is motivating people, I think this is really motivating people because they understand that the Supreme Court will have an impact on every part of their lives and our future. For voters, it isn't about who's sitting on the court. It isn't about Justice Ginsburg's successor. It's about the issues that are going to hang in the balance. And, healthcare is predominantly on the ballot with the Supreme Court. It's healthcare, it's clean air and water. It's whether you make equal pay for equal work, or the rights of voters, immigrants, women, and workers. So there's so much at stake on the court. It isn't just about one candidate. It's about really the issues. And that's what we're seeing in this race as I'm talking to voters is they understand that the court is symbolic of healthcare. It's healthcare that, Donald Trump put someone on the court who wants to dismantle the Affordable Care Act and wants to help eliminate healthcare. And that's a concern to Americans. And that's what people are really interested in right now. They're not concerned about who that person is. They're concerned about the issue that will come forward with this court.
Okay, so,
Excuse me, but I got to respond.
Go ahead, Tom.
They're also concerned about, Joe Biden's leadership and how he's going to change the rules. This is another example of we don't like what's happened, so we're going to go out and change the rules and try to pack the court. So I just can't let that go.
Okay, well,
Wait, hold on, this is just a second. If we're going to talk about changing the rules, I mean, just 4 years ago when President Barack Obama nominated Merrick Garland to be on the Supreme Court, and Mitch McConnell wouldn't let that happen, wouldn't even let it come for a vote because of past precedent. And here we are now violating that very thing that Mitch McConnell said he wouldn't do back in 2016. So let's not talk about changing rules here.
Okay, does anybody else want to jump in on this?
Well, I didn't get a shot at responding overall. And is this a motivating factor, Jeff? I say yes, for both bases of both parties. And this is particularly important in Wisconsin. We know that the president narrowly won the state last time by turning out white, non-college educated voters. And I think that this is an issue that has the opportunity to help that effort. And at the same time, I think it's particularly motivating for folks on the left to support Vice President Biden for all of the issues Jason listed and others. So I think that this is perhaps advantageous to turn out on both sides of the aisle, and that shouldn't be overlooked. This does make a difference at the end of the day. There are advantages to both parties, and that's why it's an argument to begin with.
Okay, well, Ashley, you talk about Wisconsin and how close it was last time, and I think that Democrats are still blaming Hillary Clinton in many ways for not coming to the state and not devoting the resources. I don't think Democrats are making that same mistakes this time, obviously. Notwithstanding the personal visit side of things, Biden and his forces are far outspending Trump and his forces in media, broadcast media, digital media buys. So I just want to stay with Ashley on that. What do you make of the state of the race and sort of how Democrats has almost been trying to make up for what happened last time?
Well, and it's not just Wisconsin, Jeff, it's all over the country. Some of you may have seen that Vice President Biden's campaign held a big call with their full team over the weekend, encouraging people to continue to invest, continue to door knock, make calls, turn in their ballots, that kind of thing, because it is a course correcting mechanism. You don't want to get lethargic when you see yourself way out ahead, double digits as he's been in the national polls, and risk anything. Democrats certainly don't want to find themselves in the same position as they were in 2016. And giving a lot of credit to Vice President Biden and his campaign, they definitely see that. And they've got the resources, a significant caste advantage over President Trump and the RNC combined. and the wherewithal to know that they've got to get out into the states and make sure that they're activating and turn out their votes, so it's not a 2016 all over again. We've seen that course correction happening consistently. I think they've done a really nice job. They're not leaving anything to risk, and I leave by saying there's a reason why President Obama went out and hit the stump this week for Vice President Biden. They know that they've got to bring everything, put everything onto the table, everything in the toolkit, use it. Don't let what's happened in 2016 happen again.
Corey, can we expect former President Obama in Wisconsin or Milwaukee?
I doubt we're going to have a lot of in-person events like that, but it may have some virtual events that occur. Look, Joe Biden and Kamala know how important Wisconsin voters are to them and their success. So I'm going to assume that we're going to have a lot of events that are going to include both themselves and surrogates. I mean, even today, Mayor Pete is in Green Bay right now, and the Wisconsin Democratic Party is having events all throughout the day, all throughout the week, and over the next 10 days. So we're not going to take anything for granted. As I tell folks, when they look at polls, polls don't vote, people do. And we need to ignore what those polls say and not take anything for granted and pretend and behave like we are running from behind, so that on November 3rd, we come out with the W like we're planning on doing.
So I want to go to Jason. Jason, do you agree with what I said? Like, Democrats have been trying to make up for 2016 ever since the results were known in Wisconsin?
I think we learned a lot of lessons from 2016 as a party, and some of the investments after I got elected secretary, along with Chair Perez, that we made, and realized that we really need to invest more in our state party infrastructure. And it's one of the big changes we made, focusing on every zip code. We did an every zip code count strategy, realizing we needed organizers on the ground early, that you can't just show up right before an election in October, that you need to build long-term relationships. And that's what we've been building since 2016 here in Wisconsin. The DNC, in partnership with the state party, has really built a really solid working relationship that's really helped. But we've always said at the very beginning, and something Corey said, we always thought this was going to be a close race regardless. We've been building the infrastructure that we need, and I'm incredibly proud of that robust infrastructure and really talented campaign staff that we have here in Wisconsin. It's something that we've been building. We've been working hard to build out organizing all across in every corner of Wisconsin. And, I'm excited for that. I know it's going to be close, though, as Chair Perez likes to say, don't get on the polar coaster. By that, don't just follow the polls. It's going to be a whole lot closer than I tend to think it's going to be. So we have to just keep everything we have and hit the ground running in these last 12 days to make sure that we hit the finish line on November 3rd.
Why don't you sum up what the Republican game plan has been? Because it's really been a lot different. Republicans and the grassroots organizers have been going door to door. It's a much different approach in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think the approaches to the campaigns have been quite different, but I think we all agree on this is going to be a close race. Wisconsin is ground zero, and from 2016 to where we're at today, we are out knocking on doors. We are talking to people. Wisconsin voters are used to retail politics. I mean, you go back with Bill Proxmire, standing out at the football games and shaking everybody's hand. Wisconsin voters expect to see their candidate, whether it's their state rep, their state senator that's on the ballot, or the candidate for president of the United States. So the way we're going about it is quite different. You just look at TV and it's ad for Joe Biden, and a few Trump in there. But we're taking it to the grassroots, and the grassroots are fired up. And I've never seen the enthusiasm level in Wisconsin on the Republican side that I've seen today.
Okay, well, before I move on, I just want to remind the audience that if you have a question, you can submit it through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Please make them questions, and please be respectful, in your question. Did somebody else want to talk here? I'm sorry, I interrupted somebody. Was that Corey? No? Okay. What about the state of play nationally? Can we talk about how Wisconsin fits into the jigsaw puzzle that is the Electoral College? Last time, the blue wall crumbled for Democrats. So how does Wisconsin fit in this time? Karee, can you give us a lay of the land maybe?
Yeah, I am a proud elector representing Wisconsin's 5th Congressional District, and I am excited for that opportunity, and I can't wait to do that for Joe Biden. I think what we're seeing right now is that Wisconsin is trending the same way many of the other states are in supporting Joe Biden. We've had nearly 1 million people submit their early votes already, but there are other states who've far surpassed. I mean, Texas is over, I think, almost like 2 million. I think Virginia is over 1 million. So I think people are saying right now, just like we are here in Wisconsin, how important this is. And I think that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have made sure that they don't ignore Wisconsin and that they value all of our votes and all of our voices. And I think we're going to definitely have a different outcome than what we had in 2016.
Ashley, do you see Wisconsin as a bellwether state in terms of where the election will go at the end of the day?
Sure. So to hop in on the absentee and early voting, there's already been over 1 million absentee and early votes returned in Wisconsin, and that represents 35% of your total turnout from 2016. So more than a third of all of those votes cast in the last presidential election are already in the bank. There are some other states, as mentioned, that are really record-breaking. Texas has, goodness, more than 5 million votes, almost 6 million in the door, more than 60% of total 2016 turnout. But to go back to the map as a whole, this is a race called the Rust Belt versus the Sun Belt. President Trump has to win the Sun Belt. That's Arizona, Florida, North Carolina. If he wins those three and he holds on to some of the more traditional red states that today, in all fairness, are starting to look a little bit better for Vice President Biden, those being Ohio and Georgia, win all of those 5 and then find your way to some success in the Rust Belt, the big 4 being Pennsylvania with the most electoral college votes at 20, Michigan, Wisconsin, and not to be overlooked, Minnesota. He's either got to win all of those Sun Belt states plus Ohio plus a Pennsylvania, or lose a Pennsylvania and pick up a combination of a Michigan and a Wisconsin together to be able to equal enough electoral college votes. Yes, it absolutely matters. The president is right. He knows that's why he was just there, and it sounds like possibly coming again. But he can't win Wisconsin alone within the Rust Belt. He's got to do it through some combination of a handful of other states. Michigan, for instance, is starting to look like a real stretch for him at this point.
Okay, Jason, I'm running WisPolitics.com, so I want Wisconsin, everything to revolve around Wisconsin. But where does Wisconsin fit into the jigsaw puzzle that is the Electoral College?
I absolutely think Wisconsin is an important piece of that puzzle. But I think, one of the things that we at the DNC and the party have done and the Biden campaign understands is that we need a multi-state strategy. This isn't just about winning Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, states that we lost in 2016, but it's about opening up that map. And we're seeing tremendous opportunities throughout the country. I think, you look at Arizona, I think Texas, I think Georgia is actually going to be really competitive this election cycle. And, I look at it based on some of the Senate races that I'm following as well, and seeing real opportunities for Democrats to pick up U.S. Senate seats. I think Jamie Harrison is going to beat Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. I think you're going to see Mark Kelly in Arizona. I think you're going to see Sarah Gideon in Maine. And I'm using that as a real testament to seeing the energy and grassroots enthusiasm on the ground for candidates right now who are looking for people who want to fight for everyday solutions for Americans. And, Wisconsin will certainly be a piece of that. And, I'm optimistic about how we will go as a state, but I think that optimism means we need to work even harder between now and November 3rd to keep up that momentum, to make sure that people don't get complacent and think that polls are going to speak and the race is over. This is far from over. But I think we really have an opportunity as a party to play in other places we haven't done and really expand the map to 270 and put the president on defense in a lot of places.
All right, Tom, is the president on defense nationally?
The president's trying to stay on offense, talking about the economy and, what he's done, and talking about his record of accomplishments. Obviously, COVID, isn't an issue that, it's on top issue of people's minds. We're living it day to day. I'm sitting here in Wisconsin and in my house, I rarely go into the office, and Jeff, nice backdrop behind you with maps and stuff sitting on the floor. But it's, we're dealing with COVID, but still, when you look back at the number one issues that are on people's minds, it's the economy, it is health and COVID, it's security and lawlessness, and we can go down the whole list. And when these issues get parsed out and where it ends up, R versus D, it's going to be one really close race. I think that's the one thing we all agree on, and that's why we're working so hard for each side, for each of our candidates to try to get them across the line. Are we going to know election night, Jeff? That's a question I have for you. Who the winner?
Well, wait a minute, Tom. I asked the questions here. We'll get to that one. But anyway, I want to stay with you, Tom, on who, this early voting, all the absentee voting in advance. Who wins out of that in terms of who has the advantage in terms of that? Because 40 million people have already voted in the country, right?
Yeah, traditionally Democrats have always had the advantage on early vote. The Republican voter actually likes to go to the poll, take that ballot, and see it go in the machine. But we're having huge efforts this time, more than ever before, on the early vote absentee ballot. And I think our numbers that we're seeing look really strong on the Republican side on that. So with COVID, it has dramatically affected how we campaign and how we move forward. And I think there will be some lasting effects on how campaigns are run, when COVID's gone, because it's turned to technologies like we're using today, rather than sitting in DC and, doing a one-on-one. And actually, technologies at some point do give us a great ability like today with everybody that's tuned into this. So, there's a much larger picture here, but bottom line is we're doing well on the early vote.
Okay, Kari, who wins? Who has the advantage on this early voting slice?
I do believe it's going to be Democrats that are going to have the advantage on the early vote. I think we should go back to the spring when the pandemic was in its first wave or its first peak. When we had our spring elections, when Jill Karofsky won a race for the state Supreme Court that no one thought she could do, and Democrats performed outstandingly in that contest, and a lot of it had to do with mail-in balloting, but it also included in-person voting. I live out in Merton, in the Heartland area, and I believe that if I'm the first person there in my polling station on whatever Tuesday it's going to be, I'm going to be the deciding vote. That's what I tell myself. So I get up super early to go do it. So I enjoy the pageantry of in-person voting, but I'm also keenly aware of the danger of in-person voting right now due to this pandemic. So we have encouraged more and more people to early vote and to make sure that they get the vote turned in. And if they can't, for whatever reason, that they know when they can go in person and vote. But I do think Democrats can be the ones that come out with a resounding victory, especially in terms of the early vote.
All right, Jason, which side benefits from all this early voting?
I think traditionally, I think Tom hit it on the head that traditionally in Wisconsin, Democrats vote earlier, but I think, both sides understand that this is a non-traditional election cycle, that the playbook that we've always had in races isn't there anymore. COVID has significantly impacted the way we campaign, the way elections are done. So I think we need to keep that in mind as we think about it. I think both sides are working hard to turn on that early vote. I know we as a party have been really committed on the Democratic side to making sure people know all of the options that they have to vote, and to do it in a way that is easy and efficient for them, whether they want to vote in person, whether they want to vote early in person, or whether they want to vote by mail. We're making sure that all of the options are known so that people can pick the way that works with their schedule, that's easy and convenient, and is where they feel most comfortable in casting their vote. But I think comparing it to how things have been done in the past isn't something that we can do this cycle. I think everything has changed in the way we do politics, and I think, as was mentioned, I think it's going to impact the way we do campaigning going forward for years to come as well.
Okay, now I want to get to the question that Tom raised, not that I'm going to answer it. I'm going to ask the question. But because of this early voting and because of Wisconsin's clerk's inability to open up and count until election day, might we see delays in the results? Will we know by, say, the dawn when dawn breaks on November 4th, will we know the winner in Wisconsin and the handful of other states where you can't start counting until Election Day? Ashley, what do you think about that?
Well, sure. There's 30 states that don't start counting early and absentee votes until Election Day. Wisconsin's one of those 30. So I would say Election Day is going to be more like election week. I would be prepared for a long evening, and maybe it takes a couple of days afterward. And look, there's already been more than a third votes of all of 2016 cast through early and absentee balloting in the state of Wisconsin. So expect for it to be a long couple of days. Don't be surprised if we don't know the outcome on election night as a result of some of these state laws.
Tom, what's your view?
I agree with that 100%. And, you know, we're going to see probably a record turnout for this election. So when you're just looking at the sheer numbers and then, you know, having to run all those ballots through the machine, and, you know, we've heard about some ballot issues in Wisconsin where the clerk didn't test the ballot beforehand. So they might have to go back and recreate all those ballots for the people. So it's going to take time, but people need to be patient, and we'll get to a proper answer. But we're not going to know anything on election night. That's my prediction.
Okay.
Probably on the 13th.
Okay, Karee, are we going to know election night, day after, week after, what?
I actually have to agree with my buddy Tom on this one. I don't think we will, unless it's a massive landslide. And again, I'm not counting on something like that. So I'm going of the opinion that it's going to take a few days to get it all sorted out.
Jason, do you agree? And is that an issue? Is that a problem?
Well, I tend to agree that it's going to take a while to figure it out. I think you've got states like California that give time for the absentee ballots to come in, and other places. But I think first I want to, just start with all of the municipal officials in Wisconsin who are doing tremendous work right now in the middle of a pandemic, trying to execute an election. So I just want to start by just thanking them. But, I think what we have to keep in mind at the end of the day is that, the person who decides an election is not a candidate who may go on stage on election night and declare victory, that we need to wait until election officials across this country, board of canvassers and others, election boards, make that announcement. I think one of the things we just want to make sure is that the American people are aware that it's not about, one candidate claiming victory on election night, that we need to wait for all the votes to be cast and counted and election boards to certify those winners.
Okay, so we're going to move to some audience questions now. Some of these have come in via email beforehand. And again, if you're in the audience right now, you have a question for all of our panelists, one of our panelists, you can go to the chat function at the bottom of your screen in the Q&A function, and you can type in your question. Again, please make it a question, and please be respectful. In Wisconsin this year, we don't have a governor's race or a Senate race in between the presidential race and congressional races and legislative races. So what is this impact? I think the easy answer is it nationalizes all the races, but maybe I'm wrong on that. Karee, what do you think about how is the presidential race affecting all the down ballot races?
I think it's having an effect on both sides. One side, I believe, the Democrats are getting a bump from having Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. And I think on the other side, it's going the opposite way, where Donald Trump is a drag on races where you wouldn't see it be normally competitive. And I think that's a direct result of how Donald Trump behaves, and having Republicans having to answer for that. I think Republicans would rather be able to run independent of Donald Trump and his behavior and his antics, but that's something that they're unable to do. And I'm glad to be on this side right now, and I can't wait to win in November.
So are you referring to like suburban assembly seats and Senate seats like Alberta Darling's seat then?
I don't want to get into the specifics about some of that stuff, but there are races that you would not traditionally believe would be in play. Races that are in traditional Republican strongholds now are polling in directions where it's like, oh my goodness, what is going on here? And it is directly related to those Republicans, and it's not just at the federal level. It's at the state level and down all the way down the ballot. A lot of those Republicans are being dragged down because of Donald Trump.
All right, Tom, are the suburban Republicans in Milwaukee area, are they antsy because of what's going on?
This election is a national election with COVID. Traditionally, as we've seen in the past, that there's a firewall generally between state legislative races and federal races. The issues are different that they deal with in Madison versus what they deal with in Washington. This time around, because of COVID, it's not happening. So yeah, we are seeing a little bit of a drag in suburban Milwaukee, in the Waukesha County, Milwaukee County line. There is a little bit of a drag there. But at the end of the day, we're going there reinforcing our candidates and again, knocking on doors in retail politics. My old boss, Jim Sensenbrenner, was just a great guy in retail politics, getting out, seeing people, not having people come to him going to people. And, we're out there knocking on doors and trying to get our message out there.
Okay, Ashley, what about the effect on ballot races in Wisconsin? And then I guess we can talk about, U.S. Senate races in some other states. But specifically in Wisconsin, have you heard reports about, what Carrie was talking about, a little drag on the legislative races for Republicans?
Sure. So it's across the country. This is really happening, Jeff. And why this matters is because we're going to be heading into redistricting. And that's a critical point, and why it is just so important for, depending on what side of the aisle you are on, to be in power in those state legislative seats. So, the timing in some ways is great for Democrats, not as great for Republicans, as many of these down ballot races, as mentioned, are starting to look like there's an opportunity to trend perhaps blue. And this is happening nowhere. No better example of this than right in the suburbs, where we've seen a number of seats flip from red to blue during Donald Trump's tenure. And it's just a result of a little bit of a backlash in the suburbs, which is, written about daily and incessantly. So.
Okay, Jason, what, if you're, are suburban Republicans a little nervous right now in Milwaukee area?
I think what people are looking for, whether you are looking at it as a presidential level or a legislative level, you're looking for leadership. You want to see people who are going to get to work to get things done. And when you look at the legislative level, they haven't been in session for 180 days to actually do the work that needs to get done to help the American people. And, I live in the 24th Assembly District and the 8th Senate District. So, I'm looking forward to having Neil Plotkin as my state senator and Emily Segrist as my state representative, people who are ready to get to work, who understand the problems that are facing people in Wisconsin. And that's what I think people are looking at, whether it's the presidential race or these legislative races. They're looking for people who are going to get things done, who are going to fight for them, and who are going to go and work each and every day to make sure they're improving their lives. And right now, especially in the middle of a pandemic, we're going to make sure that we are protecting people first. Healthcare and the safety of people are front and center. And that's what I'm hearing when I talk to these candidates, when I talk to voters. They're looking for candidates who are going to fight to make sure that we are protecting people, helping build back our economy, and do more to just help everyday folks.
Okay, well, Jason, since you mentioned that you think Neil Plotkin is going to win, I mean, that's Alberta Darling's Senate district. So Alberta Darling has been a fixture in the state Senate. She's co-chair of the Joint Finance Committee. And so you really think she's going to be beaten?
I've seen really great enthusiasm on Neil's campaign. I think we've been really organizing here in the 8th District. Again, I think all of these races are going to be incredibly close. I think what we're seeing, though, are trending towards Democrats. People are ready for people who are going to go and fight for them each and every day. The amount of enthusiasm I've heard from independents who are looking for a change right now, I think is really key in this. But I'm excited. I think a lot of these legislative seats are competitive right now across the state, particularly in some of the more suburban Milwaukee areas. But I think it all comes down to the ground game here in these last 12 days and the work that we do to continue turning out voters, making sure that we are doing everything that we can as a party to reach voters and to get voters to the polls.
So, Tom, is Alberta Darling going to survive?
Yeah, I think Alberta's going to survive this race. I mean, Alberta's always had tough races, but the one thing that's going on here with the Wisconsin map and where the votes are coming from is there has been a shift the last couple of years in the Republican dominant power base of the WOW counties. And the wild counties are still strong. But when you look up in northern Wisconsin, the pickups that we've had in the rural districts, and I think this time around, we have a great opportunity to actually come back in the Wisconsin Senate with more Republican senators. And I think Speaker Voss will be coming back with the same number of reps that he has. So the RAC and SERS are running great races, not only in southeast Wisconsin, but outstate. And there's not enough attention put on the outstate by much of the media.
Well, West Politics is following that, though, Tom. So, okay. So let me just keep with you, Tom, here. This has been asked. This is another audience question. Is there a particular demographic group that you expect to play a critical role in this race? What demographic group do you think is really the one that Republicans need to maximize?
Well, I think that's a difficult question because, you have to break Wisconsin down into different geographic areas. So, I mean, southeastern Wisconsin, if you look at Milwaukee, I think Republicans are doing a great job with the African-American vote. You look at, we've actually put an office in the heart of the north side of Milwaukee. We are getting volunteers in there working hard. You look at the south side with the Hispanic vote, the numbers are actually looking pretty good out of there as well. So, we do have an opportunity here to bring diverse groups into the Republican Party. And that's what we're working on to do. And I think the program that Andrew Hitt has put together through RPW and how we went about 2 years ago to try to change the Republican Party, I think it's really going to work this time around. I think people are going to be surprised at the success we do have.
Right, Tom, as you're speaking of Andrew Hitt, the chair of the state GOP. But, before I go to others here, that the outstate registration effort in red counties in Wisconsin has been substantial. So obviously, the party is trying to maximize a vote that went very pro-Trump last time.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's what we do. I mean, and Jason's doing the same thing, and the Democrats are trying to maximize where their votes are. I mean, that's what we do. The bottom line is, we're trying to win the state for President Trump, and I think both sides are busting our butts to try to do so. So you got to look where your votes are and make sure you get them out.
Right. Okay, but this is kind of a base versus base election, isn't it? I mean, the undecideds are really few, and there's not really much place to go in terms of the third party candidates. So it's basically a base versus base election. Would you agree with that, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's base versus base.
Okay, Kari, which the most critical group from your standpoint in terms of Dems have to maximize this to win Wisconsin?
Well, first, I want to say that I think this may be a base versus base, but I really believe that it's a base plus. So it's a matter of maximizing your base and how many more can you add to it. So to answer your question, I think one of the things that we are doing well at is talking to Republicans or folks who've traditionally voted Republican who may not agree with Donald Trump and are looking to go a different direction. They may have voted for Trump in 2016, but are not willing to do so right now. One of my son's soccer teammates, his dad has been a Republican voter since he was 18 years old, and he's 43 now. He texted me over a month ago and said, "Hey, Kari, this is the first time I'm voting Democrat in my entire adult life." It is folks like that who are going to help bring the win for us in November, and I think there are more and more people like that out in Heartland where I live. In 2016, I saw very few Hillary Clinton signs. I didn't see a whole lot of Kari Pennybaker signs either when I ran against Tom's friend, Jim Sensenbrenner. But now I'm seeing a lot more Tom Pausewitz signs and Joe Biden and Kamala signs, more so than I've seen in the past. And I know that there are more folks who are just simply unwilling to put up with what they've seen so far. And I think talking to those folks is going to bode well for us in November.
Well, Ashley, thank you, Kari. I guess we could, Ashley, call this the Lincoln Project voters, but in a way. But what, I mean, is this disaffected Republican vote really a thing that could help Biden win?
You know, so much has been written and said and spoken about from an academic perspective, Jeff, about suburban women. But I think 2020 has the potential to really be about the suburban male voter, as mentioned earlier, pointing to some, places like where there are suburban legislative seats that might flip one way or the other. We're starting to see that below the surface in the polling data that suburban men might be open toward voting for Vice President Biden. And we know that in a place like Wisconsin, that absolutely cannot happen for Donald Trump to win this state. He's got to really run up the score with men, really run up the score with white men, really run up the score with seniors. And seniors is another voting bloc that he has struggled with. About 3 weeks ago, that was the real topic in all of the national public polling that was coming out, where the president started to really slide with seniors as a result of, or in the immediate aftermath, I should say, of his COVID-19 diagnosis. So there are a couple of unique demographic groups that he did well with in 2016, but has just struggled amongst in recent weeks in the polling that's been available.
Okay, Jason, what group are you looking to maximize from the Democratic point of view?
Well, I think Ashley, explained it really well. And I think we as a party, it's not about just one demographic group. Obviously, there are several that are so important and key to us. African-American women are the backbone of our party, first and foremost. But I think what we're building right now is a real coalition of people. It is urban and suburban and rural. It is Republicans and Democrats who are coming together behind Joe Biden. And this is across the country and in Wisconsin that, as Cree said, this is base plus. This is people who are disinfected, who, gave President Trump a chance in 2016 and saw the failure that came with that and are looking for a different alternative, are looking for steady leadership, are looking for someone who's empathetic and understands their needs and is ready and able to hit the ground on day one to really help improve their lives and make things better. It's really a fundamental difference between, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, between Park Avenue and Scranton, Pennsylvania. So I think we're really building a real coalition here of people, of independents, Democrats, and Republicans who are coming out knowing it's time for a change and are going to get behind Joe Biden.
All right, now, Jason, I'm going to stay with you. You didn't mention the youth vote. Now, college campuses are not like they were, 4 years ago. So organizing them is a bit of a challenge. Is the youth vote something that Democrats are counting on this year, hoping for this year, or, oh, well, we'll get what we can this year?
Oh, we are absolutely working for it day and night and have had wonderful youth organizers on the ground. Our college Democrats in Wisconsin is doing amazing work in helping to turn out the youth vote. I was talking with their chair the other day. They've added some new chapters across the state and some more rural parts of Wisconsin and are really working hard right now in collaboration. And this is a piece of how the DNC has been. It has been about building these constituencies over time. This isn't just showing up right before an election cycle. This is about engaging with our core demographic and key constituency groups year round and building the infrastructure that we need to carry us through to November 3rd. So I know that, the youth vote is key, the African-American community, particularly African-American women are key, but we're really expanding that electorate right now, expanding that base of participants who are going to help take us to victory in November.
Okay, but what about the challenges of that? Just actually, where they go to vote, how you register them, and all that. You can't have a big rally on campus and say, okay, now here's where you go register.
No, you can't do that, but you can text them. And I can tell you, we've looked at different ways and been engaged in different campaign techniques. And when people get a text, they read it and they respond. So we're reaching voters in the mediums that they want to be reached. We're talking to them. We're communicating with them right now. So I am not concerned at all about what that will look like come November. And in fact, I think I'm excited for the energy I'm seeing from young people who are ready to go out and make sure that we elect Joe Biden and Democrats up and down the ticket here in Wisconsin and across the country.
Okay, Ashley, you're a student of polling. And so a question here and a question I always get is, can we really believe these polls? The national polls actually proved to be right last time, right? Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote. But can we believe all these polls?
That's a great question, Jeff. And it was one I was delighted to answer on a panel with you about a year ago. And here we are again, and I'm asked about this several times a day. So in 2016, what really happened at the state polls was a failure for a lot of the public pollsters to appropriately weight education, and there were just too many voters with a college degree or greater in a lot of those samples. We know that the ultimate composition of the electorate was more favorable at the state level in some of these places for President Trump, which, back to my point earlier, included more white voters without a college degree. The thing that's really tricky, and this goes into how you build a sample for your polling, is figuring out turnout. And in 2016, 2018, and now 2020, we are living in really almost like 100-year level turnout black swan events that it's tough to forecast for. As a pollster, you have to absolutely make sure that you have enough people in your sample who are what we call a 0 of 4, have not voted in 0 of the last 4 campaigns, to make sure you're appropriately capturing those who, as it was mentioned earlier, a lot more people are being registered both sides of the aisle, non-traditional voters. They have to be a part of your polling sample. I would conclude by just saying, look at the averages in the public polls by state. We don't have a popular vote. It's through the Electoral College. Don't look at the latest poll and say this is what's going to happen. It's just a snapshot in time. It's good to see a couple of polls on top of one another to get a real sense of where things are.
Right. The other thing I think with state polls, Ashley, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of them weren't in the field late enough to capture the late deciders. And that may not be as big of a factor this year, but I think that was definitely a problem in 2016.
That's exactly right, Jeff. In 2016, about a week out from Election Day, 15% of the national vote was still undecided. And it was on October 28th that Jim Comey reopened the email investigation into Secretary Clinton, which many say had a real impact among those undecided voters. So that's where it gets, again, a little bit tricky. Is there value in polling late? And if you're running a campaign, there's no point in putting a survey into the field in the final days because your spending decisions have been made. The cake is baked at that point. It's really just to scratch an itch. So you're exactly right. There was a failure to capture what happened in that last week after the email investigation was opened back again.
Right, but this year there are just fewer undecideds, and there are fewer places for people to go. And if there's a record turnout, then it would seem to be that it's not as that wouldn't be as much of a factor for state by state polling.
That's right. With fewer numbers of undecideds, and the other thing that bodes well for the vice president is he has been at or above 50 much more regularly in the state polls. In fact, Secretary Clinton really never hit 50 in most of those that matter to the Electoral College. That's a really big difference when you try to compare, and let's be clear, this is apples to oranges. 2020 is not 2016, but a big difference just by way of ballot share for those candidates.
Okay, thanks. Tom, you have an opinion on polling, don't you?
I usually do. What I find interesting about polling is I've been polled by the Biden campaign twice now. And my mailbox is getting flooded with mail urging me that they know I'm a Republican. They know I got to be like on the top list of scoring of a Republican. But my mailbox, I've gotten 2 direct mail pieces urging me to vote for Vice President Biden. So, I mean, polling can be used in a different fashion to try to suppress vote. And, the push polls that came into my house, it was interesting to get a call by the Biden campaign. I'll just put it that way. But the polling has been a little squirrely this time around. And you have to go back in, and like Ashley talked about, what's the model? What is that model going to look like, November 3rd? So you got to get ahead of that and then, try to massage those numbers to make them correct. But last time, I mean, the only poll that was correct was the LA Times poll, right? So on President Trump, I mean, they consistently went through and everybody was, giving him hell for actually having President Trump ahead. And then, that Wednesday morning, they look like geniuses. So
you think the shy Trump voter is a real phenomenon?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
But you're not shy though, Tom.
Really? I don't know.
All right. Kareem, what do you tell people when they ask you about polling? And I heard you say earlier, let's not pay attention to polls. Let's just vote like crazy.
That's essentially what I tell folks. Again, that polls aren't the thing that gets counted. It's our votes that get counted, and that we should not be considering where candidate X is at the poll at that time. It's a snapshot, and it's a sample of folks. It's not a representation of exactly what's going to happen. which is why we still need to go through the exercise of actually going to vote. I'm not going to rely on what some pollster is going to tell me, or that the Trump campaign has polled me several times. The Wisconsin, I think it's either the Wisconsin GOP or the Waukesha Republicans have texted me. So that doesn't mean anything to me at all. I want folks to go out and vote. Too many people fought, bled, and died for our right to go vote, and we can't take it lightly or treat it as a luxury. This is a moral imperative. People have got to go out and vote. And while I'm clearly a Democrat, and a proud one at that, I want everybody to go out and vote, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. I believe this is a fundamental American right, and we need to go ahead and do that. And I could care less what a poll says. I want to know what's going to happen when our votes get counted on November 3rd, and we find out a few days after that. That's what I'm concerned about.
All right, we have an audience request, and maybe Jason can take a whack at this. What about some of the top Senate races around the country, the ones you're watching most closely on election nights? Since Wisconsin doesn't have a Senate race, which ones do you think are really the ones where maybe a Democrat has a chance at pulling upset?
I think there are lots of places across the country for Democrats to win in U.S. Senate races across the country. We've really been building an infrastructure that really shows that every zip code matters, that we're investing in state parties and the infrastructure. I think you've looked at some of the record fundraising that has come in for Senate candidates, whether it's in South Carolina, Maine, Arizona. I'm really excited to watch a number of candidates, but I really think that we are going to keep putting everything we can into these races. We said they would all be close, and they are going to be close. But I'm excited to see, what happened with Jamie Harrison in South Carolina, Mark Kelly in Arizona, Steve Bullock in Montana, Sarah Gideon in Maine. I think there's several opportunities for Democrats to pick up seats and potentially win back the U.S. Senate if we keep moving forward and keep doing what we're doing.
You didn't mention Iowa. What do you think that the Senate's going to go Democratic, Jason?
I hope so. I know, things are close. Iowa's another great example. I think the unique thing for us as a party right now is there's so many opportunities for us to take back seats right now that we are really playing across the board and across the country. We're not taking anything for granted, though, in this. We know that, and we've said from the beginning, this is always going to be close. It's what we've expected, but it's been why we've been building the infrastructure that I think will help move us forward to success on Election Day.
Okay, Ashley, as a political director at U.S. Chamber of Commerce, you might probably watching the U.S. Senate. But do you think the U.S. Senate, what kind of odds would you say of Democrats gaining control of the U.S. Senate, and what races will you be watching?
Sure. So that's our top political priority for this cycle, Jeff. And earlier this week, Sabato Crystal Ball said they think it looks like it's at about a 50-49 scenario. A lot of people are saying that the balance of power could go to Georgia. And that's being said by Democrats and Republicans. And I think that if the balance goes down to these two Georgia Senate races, if both go to a runoff set for January 5th, that means a lot went right for Republicans on election night. And we're seeing some of these polls getting a lot tighter. Iowa was mentioned earlier, 2 surveys out yesterday. It's even now, as you would expect as you get closer to an election. I think Susan Collins wins in Maine. I think she's extremely tough and has built a campaign to handle what's been coming at her. I think Jamie Harrison does not win in South Carolina. I think Senator Graham is reelected. This has been a good week for him, a good 2 weeks presiding over the Supreme Court discussions in the U.S. Senate on the Judiciary Committee. I think it's a coin toss at this point in time, but no doubt about it, enthusiasm is with Democrats. You see that reflected in the fundraising numbers, doing 2 to 3 more than some of the Republican incumbents. That's a huge problem that will need course corrected in the future, but we'll see.
All right, we're coming down to we're running a little bit out of time here, but I want to give Tom a chance on the U.S. Senate question there, and then we'll go to Korea and then wrap it up. Tom, what's your view on the U.S. Senate?
Yeah, I agree with Ashley. They're all extremely close. I was down in Iowa visiting my son 2 weekends ago, had the TV on for a little bit, and just the onslaught. Joni Ernst is out there campaigning super hard. So that's, one of the races I'm going to be watching, but you go through all the states that were mentioned previously, it's going to be a coin flip on to see what happens in the Senate. Okay,
Kari, you get the last word here.
Well, again, thanks for having me on. And again, thanks for celebrating my birthday with me. But I'm watching many of the same races that Jason talked about. I do think Jamie Harrison is going to defeat Lindsey Graham. Jamie brought in $57 million in the third quarter alone. That just shows you some of the energy that he's been able to muster down there. And I do also think that Mark Kelly's going to win in Arizona. I do think we're going to have a really good chance of picking up enough seats to gain control again in the Senate. I think that Susan Collins is going to lose. But again, I mean, as Ashley mentioned, none of us know. I mean, we can predict either way that we want and have our favorites, obviously, but I do think the energy and momentum is definitely on our side.
Okay, well, we run out of time. It was great. It was a great hour. And Karee, I think we could probably do a better job celebrating your birthday, but we'll make it up when we can, okay? But anyway, Karee Pennybaker, a DNC committeeman and former congressional candidate, thank you for joining us. Ashley Stevenson, Vice President and National Political Director of the U.S. Chamber, thank you for joining us. Jason Ray, National Democratic National Committee Officer. He was elected Secretary of the DNC in 2017. And Tom Schreiber, RNC Committeeman and former Chief of Staff to Congressman Sensenbrenner. So thanks very much for joining us. Also want to thank our sponsors and partners, our partners, Wisconsin Alumni Association and UW-Madison, and our sponsors, Michael Best Strategies, WPS Health Insurance, XL Energy, and Exact Sciences. So we have, as I said, a few more events on the docket. 2 next week with the Milwaukee Press Club. Then November 12th, we have another DC event on healthcare, because healthcare will be earlier in that week, will be the subject of a hearing at the U.S. Supreme Court, probably with a new justice. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This is Jeff Mayer signing off for today, and we'll see you real soon.